it's Brian Taylor back here at the Rocket Shop in Melfort, Saskatchewan. I want to start off with a Bible verse today. God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's found in the book of James, and that's how I want to lead into this new project of mine. This humble 454, pulled it out of an old Chevy half-ton, and I'm going to show you how to make cheap and easy power with it and have a good time doing it. I'm going to show you how to take a used 454, sprinkle it with just the right amount of parts, a few new things, a few used things, a few Chinese things, and make some good power with it. We're shooting for 400 plus horsepower, enough to smoke the tires on your hot rod. When you're building up a low buck 454, one thing you can't spend money on is your short block. You can dump tons of money there real fast. And we're trying to just do this as cheap as we can. So one of the first things you need to do is find yourself a short block that you can just use the way it is. You don't want something that's completely wore out, but there's going to be somewhere. What I've done, I've built a few of these motors, is buy an old Chevy half-ton with a big block in it, pull the motor out, and pull the heads off, strip it down to the bare short block, and see what you have. If it's usable, if it's decent, if it's junk, if it needs to be rebuilt completely. You're looking for something that you can just clean up and use. One of the first things you're going to have to do is cut the ring ridge. As you can see here, I've used a ring ridge reamer and cut all the ridge off. When you put a bigger cam into a motor like this, you're going to be revving it higher, and if your piston rings smack up against that ring ridge, you're going to have some broken piston rings. This motor was covered in an inch of grease and grime and dirt, and you want it to look good when you're done. You want to be proud of it. You want it to look like more than it actually is. So one of the easiest things you can do is clean it up really good, especially on the outside. There's no easy way. Get out your brushes, get out your buffing wheel, get out your scrapers and scratchers and scrape her all down. That's the free part. You spend the time to do that as best as you can. When you get this thing all assembled with the heads on it, you can paint it up and it'll look really good. As far as what you want to do with your short block, cut the ring ridge off, inspect all the rods, make sure that you don't have no bad bearings or anything. Look in your oil pan to make sure there's no metal particles in there. As you're pulling your motor down and checking it out and cleaning it up, keep your eye open for any damage. As you can see, something fell into the combustion chamber of this motor. Most guys might have not noticed that, or maybe would have just left it because it doesn't look too bad. But I decided to pull the piston out and find that the ring has actually been pinched. So that pounding on the top of the piston pinched that top ring land in a little bit. So that piston either needs to be fixed up a little bit or replaced. With this motor, one of the first things I did was pull the oil pump off, pull the rear cap off, check the bearing, it was nice. Put a new rear main seal in it. That's a cheap thing to install to prevent oil leaks. And put a new collar where the oil pump joins to the oil pump drive shaft. Those get hard and brittle and break. Basically, after that's all cleaned up, the deck surfaces are nice and clean, your short block is ready to go. When you're building a low buck, big block Chevy, you got to decide where you want to spend the money. The heads and cam, valve train, and intake and carb is what makes the power. Okay, here's my low buck 454 cylinder heads. These are 781 heads that I've completely stripped down. I've taken them to a machine shop. I've put in 219 188 valves. These are just cheap valves from competition products. I've mildly ported the heads to open up the quarts to match the bigger valves. And then I had the heads resurfaced with new bronze guides and springs and retainers and keepers, all from comp cams. A couple pieces of advice about doing up heads for a big block Chevy. There's a few ways to save money and lots of ways to spend too much money. I probably should have went with aluminum heads. I thought I could save a few bucks. I did save a little bit, but not as much as I would have hoped. If you're buying valves for some 781 heads, buy 100 thou longer valves. I didn't, and I ended up having to buy keepers that are offset 50 thou, and then I had to machine 50 thou off my rotator eliminators and 50 thou out of my intake spring pockets to get my installed height correct. So that's where I had to spend a bit of extra money. So get 100 thou longer valves would be my first piece of advice. And guide plates, you want to use guide plates that work with 3/8 push rods. And you can find those on industrial motors like the 366 and the 427, or you could just buy them new. I had a set of those old 427 heads around, so I robbed the guide plates off them. The only parts that I've reused on these heads are the rocker studs and the guide plates. Everything else is brand new. New retainers, keepers, seals, springs, and valves. When you're building a low buck 454, like I said earlier, you got to decide what you want to reuse and what parts you want to buy new. I've scrounged up through my whole shop and I've found everything that I'm going to reuse. I found some gaskets out of a few different gasket sets. They're new gaskets, but just ones I had kicking around. I don't want to spend any money that I don't have to. I'm going to be reusing the oil pan. I'm going to be reusing the oil pump. I've cleaned it out with solvent. So here's what I've got for value so far. I value the short block at 600 bucks. I've bought, tore apart, cleaned up, and sold lots of these short blocks. 600 bucks is a fair value for that. The heads, I got nearly $2,000 into them by the time I got all the work done and put the new parts into them. And now I just have to order the cam, lifters. I'll probably buy a used intake, new carburetor, gaskets, and a nice aluminum water pump. There's certain things that I really like to put on my motors that aren't necessary. An aluminum water pump is one of them. It takes away weight and helps with cooling, and it looks good. I'm probably just going to be selling this engine when it's done, so I want it to look and sound good so that a buyer will be happy with it and it'll look good in his hot rod.